Welcome to the channel. When you think of the Netherlands, images of windmills, tulips and canals probably come to mind. But one of the Netherlands' most intriguing offerings is its unique approach to urban planning and architecture. One example of this is the Bijlmer, a neighborhood in Amsterdam that was planned in the 1960s with the goal of creating a utopian community. However, the plan quickly fell apart, and today the Bijlmer is widely seen as one of the greatest urban planning disasters in history. So what happened here? How did this neighborhood go from being a model of modern living to a symbol of urban decay? And finally, what lessons can we learn from this fascinating case study? Let's take a look. The story of the Bijlmer begins in the 1950s, when Amsterdam was facing a major housing crisis. The city was growing rapidly and there was a severe shortage of affordable housing. So the city government decided to take drastic action. They hired a team of some of the leading architects and urban planners of the day to design a new neighborhood that could house up to 40,000 people. Their plan was to build a self-sufficient community, complete with everything from schools and shops to parks and public transportation. This new neighborhood would be located in an area known as the Bijlmer, a marshy, sparsely populated region on the edge of Amsterdam. The planners saw this as an opportunity to create a true garden city, a place where people could live in harmony with nature. To create this idyllic community, the planners came up with a radical new design. They envisioned wide open spaces surrounded by futuristic-looking concrete high-rises, lots of greenery and roads that were built specifically for cars, rather than the more common bicycles in the Netherlands. These futuristic towers would be linked together by a series of elevated pedestrian walkways, allowing residents to get around the neighborhood without ever having to touch the ground. This design was a bold departure from anything that had been attempted before in the Netherlands. It was modern, efficient, and highly organized. The planners believed that it was the perfect solution to Amsterdam's housing crisis. They saw the high-rise towers as symbols of progress, and the elevated walkways as a way to improve safety and convenience for residents. But while the design was impressive on paper, it quickly fell apart in reality. The first residents began moving into the neighborhood in the early 1970s, and they soon began to encounter problems. The high-rise towers, which were supposed to symbolize progress and innovation, ended up feeling cold and isolating. The wide open spaces, which were intended to be used for recreation and community building, turned into vast empty areas with little activity. And the elevated walkways, which were meant to make life more convenient and safe, ended up being lonely and disconnected from daily life. As the years went by, the problems only got worse. The massive concrete towers required a lot of maintenance, and without sufficient investment, they started to decay. The elevated walkways, which were designed to keep pedestrians away from traffic, ended up becoming places where people felt unsafe, especially at night. To make matters worse, the Bijlmer became home to a large number of immigrant families who had come to Amsterdam in search of a better life. Unfortunately, many of these families found themselves trapped in a neighborhood that was increasingly seen as a place of poverty, crime, and neglect. The Bijlmer became notorious for its high crime rates and social problems, which only made it less attractive to new residents. In the 1990s, the situation had become so dire that the city of Amsterdam began to consider demolishing the entire neighborhood. The question on everyone's mind was, how did this all happen? On paper, the plan for the Bijlmer made perfect sense. The architects and urban planners who designed it were some of the best in the business, and the city was desperate for affordable housing. So what went wrong? Well, as it turns out, there are a few reasons why the Bijlmer failed. First of all, the design was too ambitious. It tried to do too much, and it ended up failing to deliver on any of its promises. Secondly, the planners didn't take into account the unique culture of Amsterdam. The city is known for its canals and its bike lanes, not its wide highways and concrete towers. Finally, the Bijlmer was built on a swamp. And while the planners had accounted for this by building elevated walkways and roadways, they hadn't accounted for the fact that these structures would require a lot of maintenance. What makes the Bijlmer such a fascinating case study is that it wasn't just a failure of urban planning. It was also a failure of human imagination. The planners had such a narrow vision of what the neighborhood should be that they failed to see the potential for creativity and innovation. If they had been willing to be a little more flexible, the Bijlmer might have become the utopian community they had envisioned. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of what not to do when planning a new neighborhood. Despite its many problems, the Bijlmer is not a total disaster. There are still some things that the planners did right. For example, they created a lot of green space and they made sure that the neighborhood was well connected to public transportation. These are two things that have helped to make the Bijlmer a livable place, even if it's not the paradise that was envisioned. The planners also made an effort to make the neighborhood aesthetically pleasing. They chose colors for the buildings and the walkways that were meant to evoke a sense of calm and tranquility. While this didn't ultimately make the Bijlmer any more livable, it did prevent the neighborhood from becoming a total eyesore. So what does the future hold for the Bijlmer? Will it always be known as a symbol of urban decay? Or can it reinvent itself? As it turns out, the city of Amsterdam has big plans for the Bijlmer. They've decided not to tear it down or abandon it. Instead, they're going to try to reinvent it. The city is investing millions of euros in a major renovation project that will transform the Bijlmer into a vibrant, mixed-use neighborhood. They're doing things like building new parks and playgrounds, improving public transportation, and making the area more pedestrian-friendly. The goal is to make the Bijlmer a place where people actually want to live, work, and play. While it remains to be seen whether these efforts will be successful, there is reason to be optimistic. After all, the Bijlmer has already come a long way. When it was first built, it was seen as a symbol of progress and innovation. Then it fell into disrepair and was considered a symbol of urban decay. Now it's being given a second chance to be something new and exciting. The story of the Bijlmer is a reminder that cities are living, breathing entities that evolve over time. They're not static monuments that we can just build and forget about. They require constant care, attention, and investment. But they also have the power to surprise us in ways that we never imagined. The Bijlmer might have started out as a failure, but it's ending up becoming something much more interesting. If you enjoyed this video, check out our other videos on amazing cities. Thanks for watching.